Breaking news as of last night, Brandon Ingram traded to the Toronto Raptors, straight up headed up north, headed up to Canada. So we're going to talk about this a little bit here. We knew this was coming. I was surprised it didn't happen last year. We were talking about Ingram was probably going to get moved. And then the rumors last year were that the trade value wasn't what the Pelicans thought it should be. Well, the trade value fell even further. The Pelicans ended up getting back Bruce Brown Jr., Kelly Olynyk, a first-round pick that was the Pacers pick, I believe is top 4 protected, and a second-rounder. So, the good part of this is that if Bruce Brown is playing for the Pelicans, potentially Lana Rhodes maybe going to Pelicans game, so that's cool. But overall, an incredibly underwhelming trade for the Pelicans, for Pelicans fans. And it was one of those trades where, you lose a player who, I've been very critical of Brandon Ingram and how he kind of fits in today's NBA. He's I think the most mid-range happy player in the NBA. And in 2025, 2024, that just doesn't translate a lot. And so I thought for the most part last year, Ingram, possessions just kind of died in his hands, and a lot of dribbling the air out of the ball and then settling for a mid-range, and then, it was what it was. But overall, in totality, one of the best Pelicans players ever. One of the, his career, great player, banner player for the organization, obviously a fan favorite and all of that, great player. So as far as his career and his accolades and all that, what he means to the Pelicans, you got to tip your cap for the years that he gave the franchise. I do think it was time to move on for sure, but as a fan, it's a horrible demand curve whenever you have a player who is a fan favorite, one of your best players year in and year out, building the franchise around the guy that people are showing up to see, the guy who they're buying his jersey. And when the return is basically the 16th pick in the draft, it's like, ugh, it feels bad. It feels gross. It feels like, damn, we don't even have a prospect we can get excited about. We don't even have a physical body, an actual player to get excited about, or to try and figure out how that player meshes. Mark Williams just got traded from the Hornets. The Hornets got back Dalton Connect. Now, Dalton Connect may end up being nothing, but the Hornets can at least be like, look, we got Dalton Connect. He's a young player. He can develop into this. He can maybe do that. In 2 years, we'll have this, and this. The Pels can't do that, right? The Pels, this is a deal that is basically, or I guess literally, luxury tax and money based. That's it. And that feels bad. When you have a team like the Pelicans who have as many young stars as they do and seemingly as much talent as they do, and for a team that was supposed to be in a win-now mode for the last couple of years, a team that last year at deep into the season was the 1 seed in the West, a team where you're sitting there and you're promised DeJounte Murray and Zion Williams and CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, and you got all these players and all this youth and all this talent, and you're making moves at the deadline to satisfy luxury tax and to satisfy expiring contracts and to move money around and all of that. It's just basically the Pelicans saying, yeah, we're cool with mediocrity. We're cool with just kind of being a meddling team as long as we can satisfy the books, and we'll see what happens. So as a Pels fan, even though I do think Ingram, it was probably time to move, it does feel bad.
The Raptors.
Yeah, that's something we had talked about previously. When we talked about BI in some of our videos, and earlier today, I think it was Mark Stein, he kind of talked about that. And that was something that was starting to gain momentum, is BI going to Toronto. And I do like the move for him. I'd assume that we're going to see an extension similar to Butler sometime soon, because otherwise, why are you making this trade? But I do like the move for him. It's not terribly surprising because Toronto needed to do something with Bruce Brown, I'd imagine. So I think he fits their timeline. He's young enough. And if some of the guys that they currently have, like Scotty and some of the other guys they have there, can take that next leap, I think.
Yeah, by the way, Bruce Brown is a expiring contract, so that's why he was part of the trade. Pels are just getting the expiring contract that they needed to. Again, that's a complete money situation.
I think Toronto could be really good really soon. And I think they also have their draft pick this year, right?
They do. They have their own draft pick, and they kind of derailed their tank a little bit. They won a bunch of games, but still, the lottery odds are more flat, and they may be just fine with all of that. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this is a deal where you're seeing motivation. This is where motivation to sell is coming into play, and you've got motivation on both sides. You've got the Toronto Raptors. They were motivated to sell on Bruce Brown. They picked up his option for this year specifically to trade him. That's what they were doing. And then on the side of the Pelicans, they didn't want to be the team that was going to pay Brandon Ingram on his next contract.
Yeah.
So they were motivated to trade him.
Yeah, so that's what was going on last year. So last year, it was pretty obvious that the Pels did not want to extend Brandon Ingram or to pay him another contract or whatever, especially with young players like Trey Murphy getting paid. So we knew this was coming, and which is why last year we were like, well, you probably want to move him last year, but he had some injuries, and so at the time, I think the idea was, well, he's injured, so his trade value is less. We don't want to get rid of him for nothing. And that's ended up being exactly what happened.
Before he could hit free agency this summer. Not that there's a lot of free agency dollars out there to spend, but still, they didn't want to deal with the messy situation this summer. So New Orleans gets to move on. They get a first-round pick from the Pacers for their troubles, which should be a decent first. We're talking mid-tier first-round pick. It'll be somewhere 15 to 20, probably somewhere in that range. It'll be an okay first. They'll pick up a second-round pick as well. And then they just get an expiring salary. They do have to take on an extra year of Kelly Olynyk. But
yeah, Olynyk, he'll be there for another year, but it's Kelly Olynyk, complete non-factor.
Would think that, that would be, no big deal for the Pelicans, especially if they're getting a first in this. And then, the Raptors, they add their guy that they're going to put next to Scotty Barnes. Now, I guess the question becomes, are they going to pay him if you're the Raptors? Are they going to?
I mean, I think with the Raptors, like you do this deal, you see how it looks, you see how you got some young players there. You're trying to build something. I think this is one of those things where you bring him in, you see how it works, you see how it looks. If it looks good, feels good, if it's trending in the right direction, maybe you do pay him, and then you build from there. But I think it's more of a trial type. Let's see what happens.
Give Brandon Ingram the $50 million he's wanting, because that would change the value of this deal a lot.
I do wonder if maybe there's something like a 4-year extension, something like that they could work out, as opposed to 50 or even 60 million, something crazy like that. I don't know what his actual max number is, but maybe he'll take a cut off the top, and maybe they'll reach an agreement there. But if that's not the case, it would be interesting if they did that just to get a bigger, quicker expiring, because Kelly would be expiring next year, but paying a first just to do that is overkill. So I'd imagine they are going to get this extension done with BI, and he'll be part of their core going forward.
What's kind of crazy is that I always talk about the human side of things, where like players get traded and your whole life you just get uprooted, and all of a sudden you go from Los Angeles to Charlotte, and it's like, damn, I'm moving across the country. Like I'm going from LA to North Carolina. Like that's just a crazy thing, right? How nuts is it for Brandon Ingram to go, okay, you go from LA, you go to New Orleans, you've been in New Orleans for a long time, and now we're trading you to a different country. We're trading you to Canada. We're trading you to a completely different place. Like we're trading you out of the United States. That is insane to think about. It's one thing to be like, yeah, I mean, I can still see my friends and family. I can fly from, whatever, Oklahoma City to Sacramento. I can still do all that. But now to be like, damn, I live in Canada. I live in Toronto. That has got to be absolutely insane.
In terms of the Pelicans,
I mean, like imagine if you had kids, or like the players always talk about finding schools for their kids and doing all that stuff. Having to do that in Canada, be like, I don't know what the situation is up. Like I don't know how things operate. Like all of a sudden now it's just the human side of this is absolutely bananas.
There was a super chat here in relation to them, so I wanted to answer that really quick. Feels like the Pels got fleeced, considering Brown.
It's fleeced if you don't have the context. I mean, if you don't have the context of the luxury tax on like what the Pels are doing with their contracts and what the Pels are doing with their money, it looks like it because you don't see any assets. So from that side of things, like, yeah, sure. But when you look at it, which is super underwhelming anyways, but when you look at it for like the money side of things, then you understand it. But pure assets, yeah, I mean, they're not getting anything. Again, it's Brandon Ingram it's Brandon Ingram for the 17th overall pick.
Brown was overpaid and was injured. Does this mean Pelicans will keep the players they traded? I mean, if they like the guys that they get, I mean, sure, they could probably work something out with Bruce and retain him at a lower number going forward, because I don't think there's any way he gets anywhere near that, because he was just explicitly signed there just to have him be a part of a deal like this to eat up a big salary number. In terms of Kelly, I mean, they technically need front court depth. So maybe they like him, but they've got him on the books for one more year. And next year, or even in the offseason, he turns into an expiring that could potentially have value for them to put into another deal if they were to try to do something there. I think really with them, the interesting piece is, are they going to do something with CJ now that they've moved off of BI, and what things look like for them there?
I think they'll try to. I mean, this is a lost season for the Pelicans anyway. And for the Raptors, look, Brandon Ingram has been out with an ankle injury. There's no rush now for him to come back. Yeah, you don't want to just have him sit out the rest of the season.
Yeah. We'll talk about this this piece, and then we'll wrap it up here, since they're kind of talking about the Raptors, and we're focused on the Pelicans side of things. But to me, this feels like the Pelicans are accepting that the window is closed for a certain group of players, and they're now trying to kind of restructure and rebuild the next window for the Pels. And that window is now going to be led by Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. The idea of BI and CJ and Zion, that is over. And the Pelicans are acknowledging that. The Pelicans are acknowledging, okay, well, we're going to trim some stuff, we're going to move the books around, and we're going to try and build around these other guys. That part, too, is very underwhelming for a Pelicans fan because, one, we got absolutely nothing out of the Zion, Brandon, CJ, that whole thing. No results. We got swept by Oklahoma City. We lost to the Suns in 6 games. Like, that was it. Cool. Sweet. You know, we hosted some play-in tournament games. Sweet. Cool, right? But it's very underwhelming because you get nothing for it. And you seemingly are getting nothing in return for it. And it's almost like, damn, as a fan, you go through all of these years of just total nothingness, and then you get these players who are exciting in name, but you get no results. And now the front office is telling you, well, be patient. You know, we're going to rebuild this thing. It's like, be patient. I've been patient. We're one of the worst teams in the NBA. How much more patient do I need to be? So it's a fan base who I think is already teetering on not caring about this team, and depending on what happens moving forward, I think you could see a real lack of care from the Pelicans fans to the team if we're going to have a couple of years or a year and a half or whatever of trimming some of these big name players to try and rebuild with a young roster. If we're trying to trim the BI, the Zion, the CJ, whatever, to build around, you know, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Jordan Hawkins, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, man, I just went through all this stuff to get to a 4-year-ish, 5-year-ish window of trying to win, and we didn't win. Actually, we're one of the worst teams in the NBA. So now you want me to take 200 steps back, go back through the rebuilding process to try and get right back to where we were this year with a bunch of big name players and a bunch of exciting players? Like, you want me to go all the way back a couple of years and go through the Omer Asik era just to get to where we are right now so that we can be the worst team in the NBA and trading off our players? Like, we need to see some results. And there has to be a real focus on our front office and Willie Green. More than likely, I would think, gets canned to save the front office. But the Pelicans need to win. Like, the Pelicans need to win. They need something to happen. They can't play this like solo Monopoly game where we're the worst team in the NBA, but they can sit here and be like, look, guys, come on, we're under the tax. Look, guys, come on, we're getting these expiring contracts so we can do this, this, and this. It's like, we don't care. I don't care about that. I'm not watching basketball games. I'm not going to the Smoothie King Center for 3 hours to watch us play like shit. But then I can celebrate the fact that we're financially making moves. If I wanted to do that, I would go watch the World Excel Championship. I would go watch the world, World Accounting Federation. But I'm not. I'm trying to watch the basketball. I'm trying to watch the NBA. So the Pelicans need to get way less focused on the books and way less focused on whatever this is, and more focused on making moves that are going to make the team win. Because I don't care about this. And I understand this, and this is fine, and this is what they probably needed to do. But if they think this is going to sell tickets, or if they think this is going to sell merch, or if they think this is going to make me care about this team, they are wrong. So there seems to be a disconnect in the front office and the fans and the product on the court. And this is just an example of that. But there you go. We're covering it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I would assume players or fans are frustrated. I'm frustrated. So we'll see what else they do moving forward. But there you go. All right, Brandon Ingram headed to the Toronto Raptors. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.